Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another week of the Better Events podcast. In today's episode, we are talking all about entertaining event ideas from live sports events. This is a really fun conversation. I personally learned so much. I'm kind of taking the interview seat and interviewing Logan for this podcast episode. Logan's all about sports, and so we get to hear from our wonderful co host. And she shares so many tips and tricks about ideas that we can take from live sports and apply them to any kind of event. So we're excited to share it with you, and let's get into this episode.
Welcome to the Better Events Podcast. Join two event strategists, Logan Clements and Mary Davidson, who believe we can all create, host, and attend better events. In this podcast, you will learn about event strategy and actions that you can use today as an event host, planner, or manager. Hear directly from the people who are creating innovative and inspiring events today and tomorrow, and grow your business along the way. Now, let's get started, and thanks for listening to the Better Events Podcast.
Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Better Events Podcast. I'm Logan Clements, one of your co-hosts, and I'm joined by fellow co-host Mary Davidson. And this week, we are talking all about sports. And hot diggity dog, I am excited. But before we jump into this exciting topic about entertaining event ideas from live sporting events, we got our conversation starter, and this week's conversation starter is actually brought to you by Corporate Curling, who is dedicated to bringing people together through the sport of curling through team building. They were one of our partners at the Better Events Conference back in December 2023. Thank you, Corporate Curling. And here is their question, Mary, to kick off our conversation. What is your favorite winter or summer Olympic sport and why?
I am honored to start answering this question because I know you have an opinion on this, I'm sure, Logan. I've always enjoyed the Olympics from just like an entertainment perspective. So there are a lot. I would say the ones that usually entertain me the most are gymnastics. They're always exciting. There's always like a lot of hype about them. So it's pretty fun to watch. And I can like feel the excitement when they nail it, like I really like that. But maybe also, and you're gonna appreciate this one, Logan, bobsled. I think it's terrifying, but I really like to watch it. Like it's just fun, but also terrifying.
Those are all great. I mean, I also feel like Corporate Curling's asking this question, so we're supposed to say curling, which Corporate Curling, I will say, curling is up there for me. It's one of my most entertaining winter sports. I got really into it during the 2018 Olympics and felt like I really was learning everything, and I got to go watch it in person in Korea when I volunteered, so that extra helped. But for me, if I had to pick one sport, I'm going to have to say track and field. A lot of people, you're going to probably think about like the 100-yard dash, all of those, or the 100-meter final, Usain Bolt. Those are all the big ones that you're going to think about. But to you, Mary, it's like the track and field, there's so many events. It's just so much fun to watch because there's like so many countries that can win. I was a thrower in college. I did javelin and hammer. So I love watching my throwing events, which sadly are not often broadcast in real time or hard to watch or at weird times of night, depending on the country. But for me, I guess I'd have to say track and field, and that's summer. If I picked a winter one, I think I'd have to agree with you, Mary. It would be tough between, I would say, probably bobsled and curling. I get into all of them. I also get into figure skating and things that I'm trying to watch more often in the non-Olympic times because I know that's really good for the sports to give them more exposure. But I'm an all-around Olympic nerd that I honestly will watch any Olympic sport and probably non-Olympic sport at least once because I'm just intrigued by the world of sports. It's just fun to get into the storylines.
Yeah, and this just made me think too, years ago, so you're going to appreciate this Corporate Curling. Years ago, I started following on Facebook the Norway curling team because of their pants. So they like are known for their fun curling pants.
Yep.
So I that did pop in my mind and I didn't say it. So I'm not just saying that. It really is something I started following when I was like in high school and I still follow them. So
I love
there
it.
you go. The more you know. But Logan, you transitioned really well into our topic because we are talking all about entertaining event ideas from live sports. And you have so much that you can share about this, I'm sure. So we're excited to learn from you today. But we're talking about it because I love asking Logan questions about sports. And I'm sure you all are going to appreciate the questions that we ask. So this is going to be more interview style, absolutely, because this is Logan's territory. And we're going to learn a lot today. So we're going to dig into the questions, Logan. Are you ready?
Oh, born ready. Born ready. This is going to be good.
It's going to be good. All right. Okay, so let's start off. What do we mean when we say live sports? We like to start at the beginning. So let's just pretend like there are people out there like me who don't know a lot about sports. What do we mean?
I mean, live sports to me is any sporting event that you pay, or maybe you don't even pay, but that you get a ticket for and you are going to go and see in person. And we're talking about it from the context of you are actually physically at the game or the sporting event. A lot of sports we watch, like we're coming off, it's February, we're coming off of Super Bowl. So I will say probably a majority, if not almost all of you listening to this episode, watched the Super Bowl on TV. So while it is a live sport, the way I talk about it is like a live sporting event would be if you actually had a ticket and you went to the Super Bowl and you watched the Super Bowl from inside Allegiant Stadium in Vegas and you had a butt in your seat and you were watching. So that's kind of the context, because and I say that because the TV experience is very different from going in person. If you're a sporting fan, you probably have, you can back me up on that. You've gone and you understand how the feeling is different. Or you might be, I know, Mary, you're not a big sports fan, and maybe it's easier for someone to convince you to maybe go and watch it because you're going to go for the experience than to sit down and turn on the TV and pay attention to the TV version. So that's like you as an attendee or a fan, that experience is very different. So when we think about live sports, it's something you're physically going to watch in person. Often you pay a ticket to be there, but some of those sporting events are free. And that's kind of that context.
Yeah, when I go to a live sporting event, I'm usually, like, for example, the Mariners. I go to a Mariners game and I'm there for the hot dog, the Dippin' Dots, and the peanuts. But there's also
I love
entertainment
that.
along the way.
But you could also make yourself a hot dog and eat ice cream and have peanuts on your couch. So why, Mary, would you go and pay for them?
Pay more than they're worth for them and
Yeah,
pay for a ticket to
exactly.
the game. Because it's all about the experience, Logan. It's about the energy and the experience in the stadium.
Exactly. Which, listeners, like if you're as an event person, like hone in on what Mary just said, because there's stuff, so much of the stressors we have with events is, putting butts in seats. How do you sell tickets? How do you convince people on the value? I mean, Mary, you're not a Mariners fan per se, but you've already bought in on the value of why you would pay $8 for a hot dog versus a dollar maybe if you're making it at home, because you're doing it for the experience. So I just want to highlight that and like a thing to think about, because as we go through some of our questions here and to give you and try to spark some ideas for you with your event, not if it doesn't even have to be sports related. This is like, I use these ideas sometimes with corporate clients, with conferences, webinars, nonprofit fundraising. The cool part about sports is and going to a live sporting event, it's all about fun. It's all about engagement. And those are things that I feel like I constantly hear my corporate clients and my other clients who are not sports related complain about, that they need to be more fun, have more engagement. And so that's kind of the goal of what we're going to talk about in this episode. And again, I'm very passionate about this. So you'll probably hear about me talking about it a lot more in some other different avenues, because I think we all can learn a lot from live sports.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm already seeing that, so I think that this is a really fun conversation. And you talk about I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm pretty sure when you describe what you do to like other people, you'll mention the phrase sports presentation like fairly often. So what is sports presentation or like game day presentation?
Yeah, so my favorite turn of phrase now when talking about sports presentation is that it is a job that is hidden in plain sight. Meaning, if you didn't know about it, which maybe listener right now, you don't know about it, you're never the wiser. And yet, the minute I'm telling you about it, you're gonna be like, of course, Logan, that makes so much sense. And you're gonna start to see us. We're like little hidden gems at these live sporting events. Archie, now my partner, has so much fun pointing out. He's like, there's the you over there. I was like, yep, good eye. That would be me over there if I was working this event. So sports presentation is the team, the production team behind that in game experience. And specifically on the production side, it's all the music you hear, everything you see on the video boards, the dance cameras, the mascots, the starting lineups, the national anthems, the halftime shows. There's people who are guest services who are part of your experience of giving your ticket, finding your seat, the food and beverage. We talk about hot dogs, Mary, and peanuts. Like that's one side of it. But the production sports presentation team is more of the screens, microphone, sound, lights, all of that part of it, more of the showbiz part of live sports. I've also heard it called game day presentation. We know in events, we love our jargon, we love our different words. So you will honestly find the exact same. I heard someone's called it match day assistant or entertainment assistant, entertainment team. There's so many different words, but sports presentations, the big one I see internationally, like when I've worked with the Olympics, what I just did in Chile with the Pan American Games, we were the sports presentation team. or SPP was our acronym. And then more domestically and at like NFL teams and some of the bigger things, I see it be called more game day presentation or match day entertainment. But yes, so there's always going to be a producer. So that's like the director who's cueing everybody and they're telling everyone what to do when. Just like your event, we're going to have a rehearsal where we're going to step through everything. We might not get the actual athletes to practice starting lineups, but we'll be able to step through where they're coming out, what's the cue, how long does it take them to get where they're going, all of that. And then they're supported by like a huge team of camera operators, the LED boards, lighting, if there's any smoke or fireworks that go off. I know when, what is it? The Seawolves rugby team that we have here in Seattle, every time they score, we have pyro or fireworks that go off. And so there's someone cueing that. The dance cam has all the cameras. What else? We have our mascots, your dance teams or your cheerleaders or any of that part. That's all part of sports presentation. And then often you'll have stage managers or court managers, physical people down near the field of play, near the court, near the field, who are really the eyes, ears, and hands of the producer for kind of making sure things are still happening. Because the cool part about it is, like your event, you're going to rehearse it, you're going to practice it. But unlike your event, we can't script sports. NFL has had a big joke going around that they script their seasons. And while it's like a funny meme, it's not true. And we don't know who's going to win. And so you constantly have to, it made me, I feel like, really good with my other clients of thinking of backup plans and backup scenarios, because in sports, you have to constantly be ready for the game to go one way or the other, and then adjust what you're doing to make sure it's in tone with that in-person experience.
This is why I love events, because I feel like there's so many similarities around what you've just said in events that like I've been a part of, even though they may not have been like sporting events. So it's just so interesting. And when you think of like how we started, when you say live sports, it reminds me of your live in-person event. Like it's a similar kind of thing. I'm really excited to start talking about entertainment because I think that sports do that like way different than other events. But before we get there, how would you say how similar to like non-sporting events? How is it similar like to conferences, fundraising events, things like that? Because I just identified some similarities, but talk us more through that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of overlap. I mean, it's one of the beauties of, I mean, why I like what I do is I like variety. We've talked about that on the podcast here. Is I enjoy doing my sporting events. And I mean, I guess I wouldn't say I wouldn't want to do them all the time. Maybe I would really like to do sports 100% of the time, but I also have a lot of fun taking what I learn from sports and applying it to my non-sporting events. And so because there's so much overlap, similar to to a non-sporting event, you're going to have rehearsals. You're going to be, it's really similar, I guess, to really boil it down, would be to the stage. Whatever you have on a stage at your event, that is how I would kind of frame, sporting events. And it's just sports are just a really, really big stage if it's a big field versus your, 10-foot by 20-foot stage in your ballroom. Now, there's things you can take from sporting events to then incorporate in other parts of your event. Like if you're thinking about how do you have a really shock and awe moment when people just arrive? I mean, that's something to steal from sports of like, have you had a moment when you walked into a sports stadium and stopped to take a photo? What did you take a photo in front of? Was it like at one of our football games that I worked, we had a big 2023 sign just because it was the start of the new year and everybody was stopping to take pictures with it. We had a photo booth somewhere else with a big cool balloon wall at a sporting event. It's like, there's so much. You would say, Mary, you've probably sourced stuff like that for your non-sporting events. So there's overlap, but there's also moments where I think you can innovate and apply some new things. But yeah, I think there's a lot. You have a script, you have a run a show, you're doing rehearsals, you have the actual execution of the event. So there's a lot of overlap with what you're doing, whether it's a sporting event or not one. I think I'm probably forgetting some, Mary. Were there other things that you've heard me talk about that are similarities that I'm forgetting to mention for our listeners?
I feel like you covered them. Like, I think we even said like the phrase before on here, like an event is an event is an event. So there really are like a lot of core similar things, even if you call it something different. Um, but if we can move into the piece that I mentioned, and I think you might agree is very different in the sports world, is the entertainment piece. So what makes sports presentation so good at entertaining people, in your opinion?
It's so hard to sum this up.
Yeah.
I just think what makes it so special is sports. Going to a live sporting event is a space that you give permission for people to have fun and to be silly. And it's places where you're going to, I mean, it's not, maybe some sports fans will hate me calling this a costume, but I would call it a costume. If you're wearing your full team gear, your jersey, your uniform, whatever, you're painting your face, you're making signs, maybe you're wearing an actual costume for a themed day. And people are maybe screaming and more emphatic than they would be in any other setting. And that's kind of the cool place, is that sports presentation it's creating a space that gives you permission to do that. Um, and I think it's also a place, because of sports, in a way that maybe you want your event to do this, but in sporting events, you have to expect the unexpected. We can't script how the sport's going to go. We can't script if the team's going to win or lose. And so there is that level of like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen next, that anticipation, that excitement that comes with sports. And then you're able to add these layers of entertainment on top of that. And so I think those are two big pieces for why it's just so entertaining. And then you just create these core memories, because I think sports presentation does a really good job of thinking through the full, complete experience you're having as an attendee. I think I've talked about it here, but I like the power of lighting and the power of music, and using it at the right time in the right moment to like really create an emotional experience. Positive, negative, more somber, whatever you're going for. Like, sports has really gotten that down in a way I want more of my non-sporting events to do. And then one really key piece I want to have here, that I wish this for all of my non-sporting events, because I have a great sport client that does this, but one of my sports clients is always willing to try something new, and they're okay with failing. Like, they're willing to try something silly and different. And if it fails, and by fail, I don't mean like a negative pushback. Maybe fails just means, hey, we didn't get a big reaction out of it. We thought people would really love this, and they just kind of went, meh, but they just move on, and we're on to the next thing. I have so many non-sporting clients who are afraid to do something different in a way that with sports, when you have lots of timeouts, you're like, okay, let's try something different for this timeout. If it doesn't work, we've got next timeout, next thing we can do. And I just wish some of that mentality I could use with some of my other folks with conferences and things, like try something out of the box at your next break. Again, what's the worst thing? As long as you're not offending anyone, just trying something silly, like teach everyone how to juggle. I don't know, something silly. And then like, if it doesn't work, okay, it didn't work, on to the next thing. And that's just something I've seen in sports. There's a little bit more of that resilience mindset of like, let's try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And some great ideas have come out of that, out of the box, funny, memorable things that our fans are talking about later, because we were willing just to try something new.
I think this is key, because I'm just thinking, like, as an event planner perspective, and like being so involved in the logistics, I'm not somebody who does like event design. It's really hard for me to come up with ideas of activities and like entertainment moments. My brain just isn't in that realm when I'm working on an event for what I'm hired to do. And so it's hard to just like bring that sometimes. I have to like really prepare and brainstorm. So this is really helpful, and hopefully it is for listeners as well, because they're like, I feel like the world of ideas opens up so much more when you're thinking about sports presentation, like what we can pull from that. I think there are so many things and so many little things, and like, as we've identified, I'm not a big sports person, but when I go to the games, I'm like watching the TV screen like the whole time, because I'm just so entertained with all of the things that they're doing during transitions. And then also like people's, do you call it like walk up music, like when a player's about to go
Yeah.
do their thing?
Yeah.
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 Love that.
I'm
Yeah.
like, "Ooh, that's fun song." Like, that's funny. Like, I don't know. I'm just so entertained by it. So I think what you're identifying is important, and I really hope listeners can pull some things from that.
And that's,
Um,
I
yeah.
guess just a point on there. I do
Yeah.
think that's a tactic, talking about here, we're talking about entertaining ideas from live sports. I mean, I
Mhm.
can continue to provide some examples, but they're from
Yeah.
my experience. Like, you as an event person, if you have ever gone to a live sporting event, like think through what were the things that stuck with you? One of the big things that for me, I know gets me so excited about a sports presentation is, I'm a sports fan. I love sports. I grew up with it. My family was really into them, but I cannot tell you what the score of a game that I went to when I was, 11 or 12. But can I tell you that I remember our Philly Fanatic baseball mascot hexing the pitcher to try to mess with him while he was pitching, just being silly? Like, I remember that like seared in my brain. He still does it to this day. So it could be, again, there's a I guess a tip there. It's like, there are certain things that if you do them over and over again, they create a little bit of a nostalgia and a comfort level there. Um, but like, that's what I remember. I don't remember the score. So if you're like trying to create some of these fun elements, are kind of what creates some of those mental, like memorable anchors for people at your event. Even though the whole point of going to the sporting event is to cheer on your team and you want them to win, that's just not what has stuck with me for 20 plus years. So that's just like reflecting on what you found really powerful or entertaining, or Mary, like looking at the Jumbotron. What were those things that you're like, oh, you noticed, oh, it was constant variety. They tried different things. Did they show videos to you every single break? Probably not. They showed some crowd shots with some music and, just kind of doing something different to help you think through some of that, those entertainment pieces. And I think you're not alone in coming up with those creative ideas. I mean, I even run out of creative ideas. That's why it's fun to keep working in sports, because I constantly get exposed to new things. But I've also found some planners that's just not their strong suit. And that's where I say bring in, bringing in a producer, bringing in a show caller, somebody that you can be like, hey, you're on a bunch of different shows. What's worked? What's something I can add in here to add some variety? I don't think everybody necessarily brings that skill set to the table, but that's like, I live in that world of like, let's think of something silly or fun or different. Let's throw out 15 ideas and just see, maybe we'll only go with one of them. But I think my hope for the whole event programming world and events in general is that we are more comfortable trying new things, because I see my sports people doing it consistently on like a daily basis, even in a way that some of my corporate or nonprofit clients are a little bit more hesitant to even try a little thing of something different and fun.
So I feel like we're itching to hear more ideas because you've shared some, but I'm like, give me more. So can you share just some more ideas that you think could apply to a non-sporting event that you've seen?
I mean, you mentioned one with walkout songs for players. I love that for my speakers. I do that. That's like a bare minimum for me. I know some event people who hate that I offer that because they're like, oh, that's so many audio files and everything. But it's just, it's such a little like jolt of energy for especially like my corporate clients. You can have a COO walk up to, I still remember this. I have a speaker who did last year up to Kane Brown's Grand, and he's like a country singer, but it was like a pop, still in my head. And it was such a good little clip we found for him of the beat dropping. And this guy came out, it like energized the crowd. It clearly energized the speaker in a way that if I just played generic music, it's not going to be bad, but it's just not going to have that same effect. We then applied that to an award show that we did, where we had all of the attendees, whether they won the award or not, because they didn't know if they won, list their favorite song during registration. And then you can build a playlist out of that. And then we also cherry picked the winners' song requests if they were appropriate. And we played that when they won. So after we said, and the winner is Mary Davidson, hit the music, and we're playing the music while they come up to stage. So again, it's like, they love Katy Perry. We just played Katy Perry music. Like, we're adding that level of personalization. And that's a moment too, like with sports, that I think is interesting, is there's certain programming elements that are for everyone in the whole arena or whole stadium. And then there's certain moments that are made like just for one person. They just made one person's day. And Mary, I know like you and I both also love Disney. It's also a Disney way of thinking of like, we can create a magical parade and moment for everyone, but we can also have, the person who's in charge of concessions gives you a nice little extra lollipop or something, or a sticker for a kid. Like, and that made that one person's day. And sports does the same thing, where it's about, and that music example is one where it's like the music, it's something different for the crowd, but it's really like, for me to know I love Katy Perry, I'm the winner. You just made my moment more important, more special, because I know you picked a song I liked. And so that's one example. Another one I did at a gala that was really fun, because people love free stuff. A t-shirt toss. If you're in a place that you can't do a t-shirt toss, I had a speaker who loved that, by the way. He had so much fun that I gave him permission to do a t-shirt toss. So that's also a way, again, your speakers are having fun, attendees are. We had a lot of glassware at one gala, so we weren't able to throw them. So what we did instead is we bought gift cards, and we hid a gift card under every single table. One gift card per table. And that was a way to get the whole room excited. And then I told our speaker he got to be like Oprah and say, look under your seats. And I've never seen more grown adults in finery, just like crawling on their hands and knees, flipping their chairs over. And it was like, $20 Starbucks gift cards. And I think there were maybe 100 tables in the room. So they spent, whatever that math is, like $2,000, but they made the whole room, go crazy. So that's another easy one that I love in terms of just kind of playing with. And then I would also, if you have a little bit more of a production budget, I talked about the like cool things you can do with lighting. Like, think about going to a basketball game or more of an indoor venue, maybe not baseball, or no, baseball does it. Mariners do it when like someone scores a home run, all the lights are flashing. And it's one of those that even if you were like mid deep in your hot dog and didn't know what was going on, you're getting conveyed, oh, this is an exciting moment. I'm supposed to be excited. And so if you have the ability to have a lot of lights, figuring out with your tech team, like how can you get the lights more involved? If there's a moment, heartfelt moment, we're playing at a fundraising event and you're playing a heartfelt moment, let's make sure you have a video look that looks different than your stage lighting, something a little bit more, reserved or less light, so people are really focused on the screens. But then if there's like happy moments or awards or applause, that you have like a big donations that's coming in, we have a setting for happy lights or something where they kind of ballyhoo, move around a little bit, or something, because that's really powerful. And I feel like people just forget that's something that, you can use, is making sure you're utilizing your lights. And then any kind of special effects. I love a good special effect. We gave our DJ at a basketball game, he has, I think they're cryo towers, which is just the fog that shoots up. But they gave him, our special effects people gave him a button. So the DJ could control it himself, like when he's like playing a song, and then just like hit his own button and these two cryo towers go, these two like whooshing towers of smoke behind him go off. And I was like, that's just such a fun like add-on if you had an after party at your non-sporting event that you want to make sure it has, what's that extra something? It's like, give your DJ a cryo towers, give him a button that gets to hit it off when, to get people excited. Or thinking about how you could utilize that again if you're doing like an award show or something like that. Yeah, there's so many ideas. I can keep going, Mary.
I mean, personally,
exciting.
I'm going to come tap you and we are going to talk about all these ideas because I'm so interested. But we should move on for the sake of time. But those are great ideas. And also, I hope that those lights you just described are actually called happy lights. Is that what they're called?
No, that's just how I would anecdotally.
Good name.
Ballyhoos is the actual,
Yeah.
is like the moving lights.
Yeah. Yeah.
They ballyhoo
Well, I
around is the
imagined it
technical
when you
term.
said happy lights. So I think that's a good name.
I had a vendor once that his term was sexy lights. It was quite funny. They were like, go sexy lights. I was like, I like
Oh,
this.
nice.
They're like, no, that's officially his company name. I was like, well, that's a great name for a lighting director. But I would say, I say happy lights, but also like if you're a planner and you don't have a producer or something, like work with your tech team. And you can use an anecdote, like a phrase like that of happy, I want stage lights, dinner lights, and happy lights. And you work on those 3 presets that they know that in your rehearsals, you're going to set up. Here's what dinner lights look like. Here's what my stage looks like. Stage lights look like. And then here's what happy lights, which it's like a set. They can set them so certain things are going off at a certain time. And it's keyable. So it'd be like, we have a big moment. We're giving our director a big award, happy lights. And I probably, if I was show calling that, I would probably just for the fun of it say, we're going to call it happy lights. So I can say, go happy lights.
I don't blame you. That would be awesome. So, Logan, if someone wanted to start working in sports presentation, if they're listening to this and they're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I need to be a part of this in that way, what would be your suggestion? Where should they start?
This is a great question. I feel like we've done episodes about being working for the Olympics and things like that. And I feel like I constantly get people asking. So we'll link to that episode because I think I have some more tangible things. But I mean, honestly, just like any event, the only way to get the gig is to get the gig and then you can gain more experience. So I would recommend looking into your local teams at that entry level for doing like a entertainment assistant. It's going to probably be hourly work, anywhere from like 18 to 25 bucks an hour is what I'm seeing here in the Seattle area. And that's where you can work as a part of the stage management team. And we've talked about here, right, Mary? It's nice sometimes not to be in charge. You're just part of the team and you can kind of experience, what it's like to be a part of that. Because I guess one part I didn't stress that I think is the main difference with sports versus other live events. And you can disagree depending on, I guess, where you fall. But I always feel like sometimes sports have even more, they're under more scrutiny. There's more eyeballs because there's more fans and people there. And just like if something goes wrong, it's a lot more noticeable, which again, if you do a conference with 200 people and they're really important to you, like sure, if something goes wrong, it's noticeable too. But I just found there's some stuff that's on TV, it's on the national stage. Internationally, I joke with my family that they should never see me on TV or else something has gone wrong if I'm being shown on TV, because I'm either grabbing someone or trying to get somewhere. And like, you really don't want to, I avoid being on camera so much. It's like very much a part of my job is to, as we say, stay out of the shot. So I'm trying to stay out of camera view. So that's one that I feel like you need to try it. It's very glamorous sounding, but there is a lot of parts that are to the grind. And working in sports presentation, you do have to really like that adrenaline of like, we rehearsed it. All right, now it's got to happen, and we're going to execute it. It doesn't matter how many times we rehearsed it. We got to execute it perfectly right now. And that is like, there's a lot of people who like that. And there's some people who don't like that. So I'd say get involved with your local team, looking for the words game day presentation, sports presentation on LinkedIn. You can get involved usually, at your local university as well. University teams have these. It's like University of Washington here has people who work in sports presentation. And then a lot of these groups are also just looking for volunteers. If you're looking to even if you're an event planner that's like, I don't want to work in sports, but I just want to try it once or twice. Like for some of our sports, we look for volunteers to help hold the flag during the national anthem. And that's ways to kind of get in and shadow a bit. But it is one with these kind of jobs. I don't see them posted very often online. You really need to either get in by knowing someone, and by knowing someone, we've told you listeners, go to LinkedIn, just look up these job descriptions or these teams and just start networking with people. And then also, if you volunteer, that's a good way just to start to understand who the key people are and get someone's phone number and be like, hey, I'm actually interested in doing this. There is a pretty high turnover, I would say, in sports presentation at certain roles, just because it can be really grinding or the seasons are long and people's life circumstances change. So there's always opportunities. I just think they're hidden more than maybe others.
That's what it seems like. Yeah. I've heard people ask you, or they've like mentioned it to me, and I'm like, ask Logan. And it just seemed like there's like kind of an in there. So I think that context you gave is actually really, really helpful and helps set some expectations for sure. But there's sports all over. So yeah.
They're all over. And there's big ones, there's small ones. I mean, I guess the context I've been talking about, it's not like I know, Mary, you've done some like fundraising, fun runs and walks and things. And I think there's overlap there, but here it was a lot more in the, like, you're paying to go and watch as a fan. And then I just think one last point I wanted to make in before we wrap up here is just one of the cool things that I think sports has gotten right is through the live sport in-person experience, they turn attendees or spectators into fans. And that is something that, like, you as an event host or your client is probably dying to do. They want to turn their event attendees into fans of their brand or their organization or their cause. And so that's where I would just challenge you to think about some of these things I talked about, or just your own personal experience of going to live sports, of what's worked, because I trust me. I mean, we got a non-sports fan here with Mary. Like, there's still a fandom to be had, even if it's not necessarily converting them fully to you watching the Mariners all the time, but you're going to go to a game every year because the experience is worth it. So how can we apply that to our events, our productions, our shows, to try to convert our attendees into being fans?
That's awesome. And we are near the end of our episode, but I'm sure if you all have more questions about this, you can reach out to Logan. I'm sure she'd love to talk about this all day. And I even hope we have future episodes where we're going to talk more about this. But we also have our bonus tip today, which is from Logan. So back to you, Logan. What's your bonus tip for today?
If you haven't already heard enough of my voice today,
let's hear it again.
This bonus tip has nothing to do with sports, but I definitely use it in my sports world, is make sure you make a group chat of all key decision makers at your event to have on hand for any of those like in the moment changes or backup plan execution. I usually like to bring this conversation up in the week prior to my event, in like my last check-in with the client, and just ask who needs to be included. I highlight here, not everyone on the entire event team needs to be in this group chat, but at least it needs to be the team lead. So you know who you need to get the message out to quickly and efficiently. So everyone knows what they need to know. This is, for example, programming is running over really long in your general session. That's going to impact the break and maybe your coffee break and your breakouts that happen after. Like, who are the key people who need to be all in one group chat when to either one, make that decision, or just know once the decision is made. And then those people can kind of send it out to theirs folks. So, that key decision maker group chat has been a lifesaver for me in some on-site situations.
Yeah, that's a great bonus tip. Well, that brings us to the end of our great episode today. So if you'd like to, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Better Events Pod. You can send us an email at bettereventspod@gmail.com. You can also visit our website, bettereventspod.com. You can also connect with Logan and I directly on LinkedIn. We love to hear from you directly. And thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Better Events Podcast. We will be back with you again next Wednesday.